Hey, so I'm Raul, and we're here again with MeeRa Kim of Arbor Entertainment,
Hi.
and so we got a lot to talk about. So um, I think this could be the first in maybe a series of talks, and but want to kind of um, let people know what inspired this one in particular. It was the podcast Voices of VR from Kent Bai. I've been a listener for quite some time now, and one of the most recent podcasts featured Natalie Mate. Their project was called U-Turn. You can easily find it if you Google U-Turn VR. Um, but the podcast itself and the VR project itself is about women's experience in the workplace. So with that, I think we can kind of bring in Mira to let her know, or let us know some of your thoughts. Like, what did this kind of make you think of? Just share with
Yeah.
us, please.
So I haven't actually seen the experience yet, but after listening to the podcast, I'm very, very intrigued to see it. Primarily because it's not just from the view of, well, the way they really made use of the 360 space and having half of it be from the point of view of the woman coder and then half of it from the point of view of her male boss. So that I thought was interesting, and because like you can switch back and forth, at your own choice, like you have your own choice to be able to like look at one view or the other. One of the interesting things that she mentioned though was that when she demoed or she showed this piece, um, pretty much consistently all the women they all were like, oh yeah, I know what that's like. But then like she said that she got a lot of mixed responses from men, which I thought that was very fascinating. Where I think she said that some men were very surprised that this is what it's like, um, and then other men were like, oh yeah, I guess I've seen that before, but they weren't quite so like I guess they just kind of like let it slide off them a little bit more. Um, so I thought was a very interesting, I guess, thing that you can learn from like actually showing. That's one of the interesting things about demoing is that you get that immediate response from your audience, and you can kind of get that feedback, and you kind of know what's working, what's not working, and yeah, that, yeah, that's one of the more fascinating things I thought that came out of that experience. And now I'm so curious to see it.
Yeah. Actually, now we have to watch it because that's the only thing we neither of us have seen it in particular. But
Yeah.
they're making use of some technology, right? Like this
Yeah.
stereoscopic sound,
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
if you depending on where you look, you can tune into the sound of and what they've done in that video is that so one hemisphere is one scene and then the other hemisphere is another scene, so it's like the point of view of the woman and then the point of view of like others in the office, and then depending on how you turn your head you can tune in out of like you can hear the audio of either hemisphere. You can kind of mix in between, so you
Yeah.
can kind of get these two experiences. So, I haven't seen it, but I mean, what I have seen is a lot of devaluing of women, and like regardless of what like work environment. And yeah, we do see that. It's in the news now, and I think that was mentioned also in the podcast where it's like, yeah, it's in the news now, so we might as well talk about it because it's a problem. And which made me think of, I think we were talking earlier about UN. The UN has a women's organization, and they do try to highlight these things. And so there are chapters in different cities around the world. So it'd be good to see what they're up to, because they're also trying to raise awareness of these issues, whether it be like 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 women getting paid less, or women being commoditized, or just undervalued. Um, so in a way, that's why I brought Mira here, because she's a brilliant person working in VR. So because I don't want to just like ask like, oh, what have you experienced or anything, but I mean, do you feel like it's more difficult for you to work in
Um,
VR? Or...
well, so far, it's a great time to be in VR just because the dialogue is there's this constant dialogue about like women not wanting like this being a burgeoning like a blossoming industry at this moment. So there is this constant dialogue of, between women in tech saying, well, we can't let what's been happening happen to us in this industry. So I see a lot more women taking more active roles and being more active in making sure that they are heard and their ideas are heard, and that they, you know, when their ideas aren't taken seriously, they actually take more initiative to actually take their ideas and do something with it rather than waiting for someone to say, okay, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. So I think, yeah, I'm sure that there are maybe situations that I'll come across, because a lot of times I feel like it's very subtle, and things happen and I don't even realize them happening until like after, and I'm like, oh well, why didn't this work out? But then when I think about like kind of the communication and the interaction that led me to this point where I'm like, you know, this isn't happening right now, then yeah, it's such a subtle like slippery slope too. So it's hard to say like exactly like at this moment how gender, if there is gender bias that is encountered, what that is right now. And especially because like people are talking about it a lot more, and so now that it's not so like it's not so taboo to even think about it, it could maybe it's also made me just more proactive naturally in conversations. But I think before I guess before getting into this, because I was in like web series and working on features, there were definitely moments then where I did feel like, oh man, like I know I'm being treated differently right now because I'm a woman. I remember once I was working on this feature and just carrying equipment, and it was just so many people were like, oh, that's so cute, I didn't know that you could lift that much. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to do my job, you know. And I don't know, it's just these constant like little subtle distractions, and it does like after a while it just kind of makes you feel like, oh man, like should I really be doing that, or like maybe I shouldn't have to do that. I don't know, it's hard to explain because it's like a lifetime of, you know, subtle comments and things like that.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing. Yeah, it's like a lot of it is just subtle. They're not, people aren't just going to be like. Well, I have heard some instances from some of my female patients where they say at their work, like a male boss would come in and be like, okay, all the women got to get out of the room right now. We're going to talk about some serious stuff, you know. But it's not always like that.
Yeah, it's
right?
not always like that.
Yeah, and then so people, in a way, it's like you got to kind of like peel the layers of the onion, like of each individual's like psychology to kind of like get to the why they're making these little comments, or why do they feel like sometimes it's, you know, it's like they want to try to tear you down a little bit, you know, because they feel bad about themselves, or, you know, there's so many reasons or motivations for people to not be so conscious, or even to not want to support others, you know, 'cause that was one of the things that we discussed actually in one of the UN Women Organization meetings. Some women described like other women kind of tearing them down more than men. I mean, have you had any kind of or do you have any insight to anything you want to share about that?
And I feel like I could see why it would happen, and in certain situations, like how it happens, is because it's hard. I think we're constantly told to that it's hard enough, like being in a leadership position, because you have to compete with all the men. But then, like, because you're also competing with all the men, you well, I guess in a way, like, you don't, like, I don't necessarily understand men's tactics and why they do the things that they do, but I can understand maybe, like, women's tactics better, and, like, I understand women better, so maybe that's why, like, women will use that knowledge to kind of undermine each other so that they can get ahead. Because we're also like, you get all these messages saying like you have to like you have to be brutal, like you have to get to the top. But then like ultimately when you think about it, like what's the point of getting to the top necessarily? Because I mean, I guess it's because for me, the work itself has always been more important than anything else. So if the work's getting done, I don't understand the purpose of bringing other people down, because they could probably help me make that better, that the end product better. But yeah, I think it's just this mentality that we're taught to be so competitive. And for women, and I think men are this way with each other too. Like they know each other's weaknesses, and they might, tear each other down that way too. But I don't know. I don't know for that for sure. I haven't talked to other men about it necessarily if they think that other men are trying to tear them down. But I do feel like it's not specific, just like gender. Like as far as like people tearing each other down, it just happens regardless.
No, but I think like the word you just used was like taught. I think sometimes people, we're not like born to like tear each other down truly, but we're kind of taught some behavior patterns, and trying to either get one over on somebody, or like competitiveness where there's no need to behave in such a way where you should be collaborating, especially like in art, right? Theater. We both have a theater background, and so it's all about collaborating, really. I mean, you might have a director, but there's so many things coming together to make a theater piece or a film. It's like it says. I think going back to my other point about like the layers of the onion, it's like there's so much that goes into each individual's like psychology that like makes them like act certain ways in different situations that are just not productive.
And I've been reading about how a lot of people are starting to write about that it all starts young. You got to teach kids at a young age, that it's not okay to treat each other this way, or especially like teaching young girls that they are strong and they don't have to just be pretty to have any value. So I can see how there seems to be a shift in the way that's but it also could be because I'm in this like little bubble, and the things that I read are all about like positive change to me, but I haven't been around the world enough to really see if it's happening globally. It's as far as the other thing that I thought was really fascinating, is the sound that they did, and the way they were talking about it. When you look in one direction, like the sound in the other scene like dims, so that like you're present in this scene, and when you turn around, that dims so that you're present in this scene. I'm very curious about how they did that.
Totally. Yeah, it's a technical like we just have to investigate more on that, like how they pulled that off, because they also said that you can kind of like listen half and half if you want and stuff. So that's pretty awesome. I was very encouraged by how much they really they took it seriously, like not as just let's just do this in 360, but like why they were doing this in 360 and how they can I guess utilize the actual space that they're in. So I thought that was really good. And also they were talking about like a little towards the end, they were talking about funding and how they finance this independently. And I guess I'm very curious to see like how things will pan out, like how things will start to I guess come together as far as the distribution side. And I kind of hope that it's a little different from how things are right now, like traditionally, and maybe it will be completely different from what we're all used to, because with the whole new media aspect of entertainment, that's like
basically disrupted the way like television and the theatrical industry has been functioning, or they've been operating. I am very curious about how that's gonna actually like work out. Maybe instead of having such a wide gap between like independent productions and like these studio productions, there'll be a lot more kind of just happening in this happy middle.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and actually, I'm glad you brought that up because this is what I was gonna ask you next. So, but with regards to like say funding, but also even like, you do see like some in a way I consider it like maybe kind of like an old way of thinking or an antiquated way of thinking from the big studios with regards to some of the features that are made, and then it's not quite working out like in the box office for them, but they still keep doing the same thing. But then now we have a lot of these independent, or it can be easier, even with a little bit of funding, to at least start making your own projects. Do you feel though, like I guess to kind of bring it back to also like women in the industry? I mean, do you feel that? I mean that like you might have necessarily had to like form your own production company, like just to make sure that you work with people that you trust, and as opposed to like trying to like try to get your way into like working like at one of the big studios that we have around here.
Well, I think because I came here after working for a corporate company, because I worked at a publishing company before I came here, and just the structure and like it's because it's having to like feeling like there are parts of my job that I could do better if I could just have the flexibility to do things the way that I felt like was more efficient, but then it would be something that had to run through my boss and like had to run through like different channels and everything like that. And I understand that, you know, kind of had to do that so that they could communicate with the other departments. But it just seemed like too much work to just get anything done. So I imagine that the studios ran the same way, where like there's always this chain of command. So I was already interested in like starting my production company when I first came out here. That was kind of a goal anyway, because I just like to have more freedom and flexibility. But I definitely didn't feel like I had to. But I think that it's not just a gender thing, but I think that just from all the people that I've met since I've been out here, and how many of those people that I know have started their own production companies with the people that they work with, I think it's just anyone just wanting to get stuff done will just naturally start their own business and start their own production company, because it is frustrating to constantly wait for someone to tell you, oh yeah, I'm going to greenlight this project, but then you don't always have full control over that either. They'll say, yeah, we've greenlit this project, but here's like 10 pages of things that you have to do to get this money. And then like as having your own production company is just as difficult, because you don't have that money. You have to find other ways to get it, or kind of beg and plead for people to like help you make your projects. And eventually like something will land, but at least I feel like at least we're doing stuff, and so I'm doing something to actually like put the things that I've learned into practice, so that I can refine those skills and like make it my own in a way, so that like all the things that I've learned, like logistically what I need to do as a producer, I have all that like arsenal of like information, but then I can organize it the way that's comfortable for me, or like, you know, gather a team together, and we can disperse the responsibilities amongst us, between people that I trust, you know, as opposed to someone that's been assigned to me and I'm not quite sure if they can actually do the job. So yeah, I think, and I definitely think that here, especially, like it's just something that people do. Like everyone gets to a point where you're like, I'm just tired of waiting. But I also see that in other industries too, because there's so many startups. Like the number of startups
Yeah.
that open every year, or the ideas that people have, and like all these side gigs that people are doing to start their own businesses. Because again, I don't think anybody wants to wait anymore.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and it's kind of like my experience for coming from theater school and not wanting to do a lot of things that people were doing to get into the industry, and so then I became a physician, but I mean I still have like this passion for the art, and so that's why we're here today, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just doing it, really, but on your own terms, and I think that's the most important takeaway, I guess,
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, there's something very scary, and there's something very powerful about doing things on your own terms, because it's the powerful things are obvious, and I think the scary things are also very obvious, because like there's uncertainty is it's very unnatural, like it's a very unsettling feeling. But at the same time, like I think historically maybe it is something that's natural too, because like back in the day, like no one knew what was gonna,
Yeah.
if you were gonna get eaten by a lion the next day or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. All right, so I think we should probably leave it there.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was really great talking to you.
Likewise. It's fun.
All right.
Thanks
so,
for inviting me.
Yeah, no problem. Do you want to tell people what your website is?
Yeah, so our website is www.arborentertainment.com. We have some samples of our work there, so we'd love for you guys to check it out, and send us your feedback and stuff. If you have any project ideas or just comments about our work, please send them along.
All right, thank you.